Subscribe to the Legacy of Survival channel right now, because what you're about to hear isn't recycled trivia or shallow commentary. This channel exists to preserve hard-earned lessons written in blood, concrete and discipline. And if you care about survival history the way I do, you'll want to be here for every episode you haven't seen yet. Let me start with something uncomfortable. During World War II, civilians survived sustained bombing campaigns with casualty rates that would shock modern disaster planners. Today, with stronger materials, advanced engineering software, and endless regulations, people still die in storms, fires, earthquakes and blasts that are far less intense than wartime bombardment. This isn't because people in the 1940s were luckier. It's because their shelters were designed for survival first, and our homes are designed for convenience, speed, and cost. If you stay with me for the next few minutes, you'll understand exactly why those old shelters worked, where modern housing fails, and how you can apply these lessons today in practical, realistic ways. The brutal reality of World War II forced shelters to be built for survival, not comfort. WWII shelters were born under relentless pressure. In London, Hamburg, Berlin and Tokyo, failure meant death within minutes. There was no room for architectural vanity. Civil defence engineers focused on three things only: blast resistance, fragmentation protection, and survivable air quality. Walls were thick, often reinforced concrete or layered masonry backed by earth. Entrances were angled or baffled to deflect blast waves. Interiors were cramped, uncomfortable and often damp, but they worked. When bombs collapsed entire streets, people underground walked out alive because the structure absorbed energy instead of transferring it inward. Modern homes rarely consider this kind of threat profile. Open floor plans, large glass surfaces, lightweight framing and roof trusses optimized for cost are excellent for real estate listings and terrible for disaster survivability. When extreme forces hit, modern houses tend to fail catastrophically rather than gradually, leaving occupants with no survivable void. You know, back in the days of the Second World War, shelters were designed to fail slowly, giving folks precious time to react. But, modern homes? Well, they tend to fail all at once, without warning. One of the most important engineering principles that came out of WWII shelter design is what we call controlled failure. Shelters were built so that, if you like, the outer layers could crack, spall or deform, but the core would remain intact. That's exactly why people survived direct hits in reinforced bunkers, even when the entrances collapsed. The structure was designed to sacrifice non-critical components, just to protect human life. Modern residential construction, well, it does quite the opposite. When roof trusses fail, they often bring the entire structure down with them. And when glass walls shatter, they can, unfortunately, turn into lethal projectiles. Lightweight walls these days provide no meaningful protection from debris, wind-driven objects, or secondary collapses. That's why tornadoes, wildfires and even gas explosions can sadly turn a home into a death trap in a matter of seconds. You can, actually apply this lesson today by identifying or creating a survivable core in your living space. A basement corner reinforced with masonry, a small interior room retrofitted with concrete board and steel framing, or even an earth-bermed storm shelter. These all draw directly from WWII. Logic. The goal here isn't to save the house, but rather to save the people inside it. Air, heat and smoke were, well, treated as killers during WWII, not just inconveniences. WWII shelter engineers understood that people don't just die from blasts, they die from suffocation, heat, smoke and, honestly, panic. Ventilation systems were manual, redundant and protected. Air shafts were angled and filtered. In many shelters, simple hand-cranked fans ensured airflow even if power failed. Fires above ground were expected, so shelters were sealed against smoke infiltration. Modern homes, tend to assume that power will always be available and that fresh air will always come from outside. But during wildfires, hurricanes, or even industrial accidents, this sort of assumption can actually kill people. Smoke fills houses, toxic gases seep in, and those sealed modern windows trap heat until, well, rooms become completely uninhabitable. A practical takeaway here is to start thinking like a civil defence engineer. Ask yourself how you'd ventilate a safe room without electricity. Sometimes just a simple passive vent with a few bends, fire-resistant materials and closable dampers can dramatically increase survival time. Honestly, even basic knowledge of airflow direction and pressure differentials can mean the difference between life and death. Back in the day, WWII shelter placement respected physics, not aesthetics. Shelters were placed underground, against embankments, or, integrated into terrain whenever possible. Earth absorbs blast energy, stops shrapnel and regulates temperature. Many of the most successful shelters weren't especially strong on their own, but they used mass and placement intelligently. Modern homes often sit elevated, exposed, and, well, surrounded by flammable landscaping. This increases vulnerability to wind, fire, and debris impact. Applying World War II logic means using terrain as protection. Earth-covered storm shelters, reinforced basements, and fire-resistant buffer zones around structures are not old-fashioned ideas. They are, in fact, proven survival strategies. The mindset behind World War II shelters is the real lesson here. Perhaps the most important difference is psychological. WWII shelter planning assumed the worst-case scenario as a certainty, not a remote possibility. People trained, drilled, and took shelter seriously. Modern society treats disasters as anomalies, and that complacency gets people killed. You can adopt the WWII mindset without living in fear. Know where you go when things go wrong. Reinforce one space instead of trusting the whole structure. Store tools, lighting and air solutions where you'll need them, not in a garage you may never reach. This isn't paranoia, it's discipline. WWII shelters saved lives because they were honest about danger. Modern homes kill in disasters because they pretend danger won't come. History already ran the experiment for us, and the results are clear. If this kind of deep, no-nonsense survival history matters to you, subscribe to the Legacy of Survival channel. Share this video with someone who still believes modern equals safer, and help keep these lessons alive for the people who will need them next.